She's making $50,000. So it's nothing like to go crazy about, right? But she said she just used hustle, hard work, networking through Instagram.
I have a Women Invest in Real Estate community, and that is also a part-time gig for me. It's super fun.
Because you're able to leave in a really quick time frame, so you must have had a lot of motivation behind that.
I always knew that I wanted to be self-employed and be a full-time entrepreneur. I just wasn't exactly sure.
It sounds like that really stuck out to you. Was there something specific, family member, mentor? How did that come to be?
Very quickly realized how time-intensive flipping was and wanted a more passive route.
If you're making that money, you have to probably find a place to live that you're able to sustain that living. And with remote work, it's more possible.
I just used that money to basically fund my real estate investments. Like I said, I bought my first triplex for $78,000.
All coming from a variety of backgrounds and places and living situations. So it's inspiring.
I track my spending every single month, so I know exactly how much is going out and how much is coming in.
Well, welcome back to the Weekly Juice. As always, it's your boys, but it's just Corey. Ryan's not here, unfortunately. He had something come up, so it's Corey here for you. And we had a pretty cool guest on today. We had Amelia Jo. Well, she goes by Amelia Jo on Instagram. Amelia McGee actually is her name. She is an investor out of Iowa. First investor we've ever had out of Iowa that's been on the show. She's got 36 units. She's 30 years old. So, I mean, the people that we're having come on the show are just like surprising us every single day. 36 units, 30 years old. She's actually under contract for a 40 unit to double her portfolio, be at 30 years old and have over 70 units. So what a cool story. She does basically all midterm rentals. And Des Moines, I'm learning about Des Moines, Iowa throughout the episode. It's a pretty cool place to invest. She called it like a mini Denver. So she really took advantage of the fact that she knew her neighborhood and her local area better than anybody else. She had a project management job that was, she's making $50,000. So it's nothing like to go crazy about, right? But she said she just used hustle, hard work, networking through Instagram. And she talked about exactly how she in the last couple of years, she took down an 11 unit with somebody that she met on Instagram. So we talk about networking, but like this whole thing comes full circle in this episode. And she breaks down exactly how she built her way through her portfolio. So I could talk for hours on it. We do talk for an hour on it, but let's bring Amelia in to share her story. That's an exciting one. All right, Amelia, welcome to the Weekly Juice podcast. Thanks for taking the time tonight. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with our guests.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely. So let's see if you could maybe just dive into a little bit of your background, like who you are, where you're from, and like how real estate investing became to be such a big part of your life.
Yeah, so my name's Amelia McGee. I'm based in Des Moines, Iowa. I'm 30 years old, and I've been investing in real estate for about 2 years now. I started with my first buy and hold rental in October of 2020 and quickly accumulated 36 doors over the next 2 years and was able to leave my full-time job as a project manager. And now I do real estate full-time along with I have a Women Invest in Real Estate community, and that is also a part-time gig for me. It's super fun. And my units are a mix of long-term, midterm, and I have one short-term.
Awesome. So let's talk about how you got started. You mentioned you're a project manager. Was there something about that job that was not fulfilling for you? Did you have like an aha moment that you were like, I need to do something different? Because you're able to leave in a really quick time frame. So you must have had a lot of motivation behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. I always knew that I wanted to be self-employed and be a full-time entrepreneur. I just wasn't exactly sure with what. And once I realized that it could be real estate investing, I was just like all in, like spent every waking moment doing real estate investing. So yeah, that's how I started. I started actually with a flip. And I made about 20,000, split that. We made 40, split that with a partner. And I took my 20,000 and put a down payment on a triplex with that.
So what gave you the motivation to get started in terms of like, did somebody that were they doing it? Like, how did you get the interest and like why, I guess, real estate? Because there's a lot of ways to build wealth and potentially get into financial freedom, but real estate, it sounds like that really stuck out to you. Was there something specific, family member, mentor? How did that come to be?
Not honestly, HGTV. I loved like the flipping shows, and I originally wanted to be a flipper. That's why I started with a flip. And just thought, hey, if I could add like $20,000 to $40,000 a year on top of my full-time salary, like that's a pretty good side gig. And very, very quickly realized how time intensive flipping was and wanted a more passive route. And so at some point during that year of flipping a house, I stumbled across Bigger Pockets. I honestly don't remember how. I started following a couple investors on Instagram. Investor Girl Brit specifically, I remember being the first woman that I started following, first investor ever, and was like, hey, I love what she's doing, but didn't wait too long to actually take action on that information. I was pretty much like, okay, like this is going to be it. So I need to get started right away.
Cool. So, and you're located in Iowa, correct? Is that where you live and then also where you invest, or or do you invest out of state?
Yeah, I live and invest in Iowa. It's very low cost of living, very cheap to buy properties here, specifically in the areas that I'm purchasing, which I think is another element to my story. Why I was able to grow so rapidly is because my first triplex that I ever purchased was $78,000. So, I mean, and it cash flows around $800 a month. So it was like a really good deal, but didn't cost me that much money to get into.
Makes sense. Yeah. So like talk to me about what it's like to invest in Iowa. I think you're probably the first, maybe you get on a bunch of podcasts and you may be the first person that invests in Iowa that they've talked to as well too. And no disrespect to Iowa, because that sounds like I've heard amazing things about it. I just don't know a lot of people from Iowa. So give me the pros and cons that you kind of went through it a little bit, but what's the reason that you like it there? And you're kind of a testament to people that say, well, I can't invest in my own backyard. But I think there's a way to invest in every single backyard. If you want to, you can also do long-term, unless you're maybe in like Midtown Manhattan or like downtown San Francisco. But other than that, I recommend people getting started investing in their backyard because I think they know it better. Was that, your competitive advantage in that market?
Yeah, there's a couple things there. One, I started investing in my hometown, so I had a huge competitive advantage there. The town, however, is only 5,000 people. So it's a very rural community, which I think scares a lot of people away. And I wouldn't necessarily say to an out-of-state investor, go get started in a rural community, because you have to have already built connections there. People aren't like, if you don't know a repairman or you don't know an HVAC or a plumber in a small town, it's going to be really hard to find them. But for me, I knew all those people already. So that was an amazing opportunity for me. The second is in Des Moines, which is the capital of Iowa, where I actually live. I also invest there. I love Des Moines because it's like a hidden gem. I call it like a mini Denver. It's super cool, really progressive. Lots of cool breweries here. It's great. And I love that it has that appreciation, which other parts of Iowa don't have. But it also still has decent cash flow. So I would say, to describe Iowa as a state where you might invest, it's going to have high cash flow and probably lower appreciation unless you're in a bigger city like Des Moines.
Got it. And then I imagine Des Moines is the area where you're doing a lot of your midterm rentals, right? I mean, if you invest there, totally, or it sounds like most of your portfolio is there, but talk to me about the midterm rental like scene there and why you feel like that was the best route for you to go, with your portfolio.
Yeah, midterm rentals are by far my favorite strategy. I have 8 units in the Des Moines area that I've converted to midterm rentals. There are, I think, 5 large regional hospital chains, like, I don't know if chain's the right word, but they're owned by different companies in Des Moines. And so there's a large influx of traveling nurses in that area. So it's great for that. But I've also housed quite a few construction workers, wind turbine technicians, solar panel technicians. Like, there's a large need for those workers in Des Moines because it is growing rapidly, and I think it will be for many years to come. So that also gives me some stability with my midterm rentals. I do, however, have some midterm rentals in my rural community, though, as well, which I think people don't realize can be successful. But it's really hard to find staffing at smaller hospitals. Like there's not a lot of RNs in this community, so they are having to hire travelers to come in, and they need a place to live. So I've been able to fulfill that need there.
Got it. Yeah. Midterm is something that's come on so strong in the past like year or so. I'm curious how you would describe the difference in your management strategies between maybe a long term and a midterm. And then also on top of that, what do you think the revenue difference is? Like if you can rent out a place long term for, let's just say, I imagine, let's just call it $2,000 a month. Are you able to get $3,000 or $4,000 a month? Like, is it that much higher to do midterm? Just talk to me about like one, the management aspect of it, how that differs, and then maybe the profit breakdown, how much higher you're able to get.
This is actually one of the reasons why midterm rentals are my favorite, is because the management is really not that different from a long-term tenant. Once you have them onboarded and in the unit, I pretty much never hear from them, similar to a long-term tenant. The onboarding process is a little bit more cumbersome, only because you're having a turnover about every 3 months or so. But once you have your systems in place, like I have a cleaner that I've hired out, I have automated messages set up through Hospitable that they send all the check-in process to the nurses. So that's very hands-off. I mean, it's pretty much just the extra turnovers that you have that make it a little bit more time consuming than a long-term. As far as revenue, so I have an 11-unit apartment that I've converted 6 of the units into midterm rentals. Long-term rent for those units would be about $700, but I charge $1,300 for my midterm, and it costs me between $2 and $3 to furnish. So I'm very quickly making the furnishing costs back and then cash flowing $600 more per month, which is huge. It's almost double. I mean, that number seems fairly small because it's a studio, but percentage wise, it's 2x.
Absolutely.
Term.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. So like my numbers were kind of in line there, just at a different scale. Like to be able to 2x your investment and you have more turnover, but you also have less. My guess would be higher quality tenants, people that are traveling for, especially the like nurses that are coming in. And then also with the turnover being quick, there's not that much time for people to break stuff. Like they could, anybody can break something, but I feel like do you see that as the maintenance is around the same level as a long-term?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never had anyone break anything. And quite frankly, they usually leave things that can be used. Like I've had them leave vacuums, storage bins, different things like that, honestly. But yeah, I mean, there's an extra risk there that your furniture could get ruined, but I don't furnish my units with like luxury furniture that it's going to really cost me an arm and a leg to replace. And I also still get deposits on those units. So, if something does get ruined, I have a little bit of a safety net there. But like I said, I haven't had any issue. They're super high quality of tenants. Another reason why I love midterm rentals. So yeah, it's honestly, it's like the best, and it's a win-win-win all the way around.
Cool. And maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves. We'll talk about like how you built the portfolio coming up here soon. But since we've been talking about the management, do you manage the portfolio yourself, or do you have property management that does that for you and with you, or do you have virtual assistants? Like what's your strategy for trying to take the least amount of your own time as possible to manage it?
Yeah, so I do self-manage all 36 units, long-term, midterm, and the short-term. But it's my full-time job. Real estate is my full-time job. So it's not like I'm, doing this on top of a really demanding W-2. I would say that I maybe spend 5 hours a week across all 36 units doing management. One way that I cut down on the time that it takes is if I have a handyman that needs to get into a unit to make some sort of a repair, I connect him directly with the tenant and have them schedule it between the two of them through a 3-way group text between me, the tenant, and the handyman. So I'm still in the loop, but that completely eliminates me as the middle person, which I'm a huge fan of. It's just so cumbersome to try and coordinate schedules between two different people when you're like the third man out. So that honestly has been the biggest help. I think everything else is pretty much systematized. I onboard people the same exact way every single time, collect rent the same exact way. So it's not that much work. I'm a huge proponent of self-managing if you have the extra time to do so.
Yeah, so we get a lot of mixed reviews on whether or not to self-manage or hire a property manager. For the way that Ryan and I function, hiring a property manager was the best decision we ever made. And we've said it on a lot of our podcasts because we both work full-time jobs. And the patience level that I personally have with tenants has created a relationship that I'm not fond of with them. And I'd rather be the outside that the overseeing our management company than trying to deal with scheduling a maintenance issue that the tenant says they're going to be home and then they're not home for. It's just like too much for me personally, but
sure.
I can applaud it, and you're saving significant dollars. And if you have your systems built out, it makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering if you could potentially go into the how-to of building this portfolio. You know, it's funny, you kind of, and everyone who comes on the show does this, like, you know, I have 30 units, 40 units, 50 units, whatever. And then like people listening are like, how the hell did somebody do this so quickly? Like what's the way they did it? Was it you literally saving up money each time you were able to bring money in from your W-2 job, save up the cash flows, roll them into more deals? Or do you have a lot of partners? Like what's the strategy for you to grow your portfolio to 36 in such a short period of time?
It's a huge mixture between all of those. I will tell you, I was making a very modest salary of $50,000 at my full-time job. So I didn't have those golden handcuffs that it took to quit my job. So that hopefully makes me a little more relatable. I didn't have a super high paying job, but I am very financially savvy and I had a strict budget. I think I probably lived on 50% of my salary and saved the rest. And I just used that money to basically fund my real estate investments. Like I said, I bought my first triplex for $78,000. And I used the money that I made from a flip to buy that property. It was kind of an inadvertent burr, because it wasn't going to close in time. So I just said, I'll just pay for it all cash. I'll borrow a little bit of money from someone to be able to close all cash. And then I'll just refinance out of it, which worked really well because I was able to fix up some of the units before I got the bank loan, and it appraised for 92. So I pulled out I pulled out most of my equity, and then I put a down payment on a quadplex that I bought for 135. So I had 7 units within 3 months because I utilized the BRRRR strategy, and I had a decent amount of savings just from being frugal and financially, savvy already.
Yeah, totally. And you're right. You made this entirely more relatable. There's a lot of people that are listening that are looking to get into real estate. They make something like what you said, $50,000. And, not to mitigate that, that's around the national average for what people are making. Right. So, but to do that, people think that they can't get into real estate, and it is hard to live off 50 grand. I would admit that, depending upon where you live. I'm in the Philadelphia area. So like,
yeah, I would, it's fine.
Right, exactly. So here's the difficult situation is that you may have to, if you're making that money, you have to probably find a place to live that you're able to sustain that living. And with remote work, it's more possible. But then what are some strategies that you use to save up money? I mean, even in Iowa, like I said, I feel like that's accomplishing a lot to be able to save up a significant amount. Like where you just like, look, I got to be this way for a couple years, and knowing that on the back end, you're going to reap the reward and the benefit of doing that. Yeah.
So even before I was investing in real estate, I knew that I call myself a Dave Ramsey dropout. Like I wanted to be debt free. So like I bought a car when I was 23 and had it paid off when I was 25. So I didn't have a car loan that was eating up a chunk of my salary. I paid my student loans off within 5 years. So I was able to really accelerate my savings because I didn't have a $500 student loan payment. And then my boyfriend and I live together. So we split the living expenses, which obviously cuts down on how much I'm spending every month. And I don't have any kids. I don't have any pets. So like, it's really just me. I track my spending every single month, so I know exactly how much is going out and how much is coming in. And then I also had a part-time job bartending, so I used that money, and that was basically either my fun money or I just saved it every single month. So yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily easy, but it's like, it's so doable if you really want it. Like, you have to want it though.
Yeah, I think that's the key for a lot of people is that unfortunately, a number of people will make excuses for why it's not possible. And then the more people that I interview, I find that they've come from situations that are harder than the one that I've come from and been able to build it. So if I can do it, and then 135 people that we've interviewed can do it, all coming from a variety of backgrounds and places and living situations. So it's inspiring. And there's kind of a stigma or a negative tone with side hustles right now, like the hustle culture even. But I think that part of it's like, it's so necessary to get ahead, right?
Mm-hmm.
If that's the life you want to live. If it's not, if happiness is the ultimate goal, which I believe it is, but for me, I think wealth translates to happiness in the sense that you're not desperate and you don't have to make desperate decisions with your life. So that is really cool. And I think that's really a relatable scenario for a lot of people that are listening.
Yeah, I think hustle culture becomes toxic in someone's life when it's a never ending cycle. Like, if it's a means to an end, if it's a 2, 3, even 5 year means to an end, I'm all for it. But if it becomes this thing where you just like, you're addicted to the hustle, then it's like, well, why do you even want to be financially independent? Or why do you even want to make passive income if you're never taking a rest? Like, for me, I want to be able to like go live on a beach and literally have no responsibilities in 2 years, like, which I'm almost to that point, other than I manage my portfolio right now. But eventually I'll hire it out and not have to do shit every single day. So
yeah, that is the goal. And I think that I may be bursting your bubble here, but I have a feeling that you may not get to the point where you won't do anything, because the amount of work and effort that it takes to get to where you are. The good news is you'll probably have to work a ton less, but I don't know. I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but the personality that it takes, I think I have it and Ryan has it too, where I'm like, I can't wait to quote unquote retire. I just don't think I will, because it'll be the next project that inspires me because of the kind of brains that we have, and likely you have, to be able to build 36 units in a short period of time. You think you'll be able to push the off button? I'm curious to hear what you have to say on that.
good point. No, my mom likes to tell me I have a dreamer mind, like I'm always scheming something. And I think it's that it's my like, I'm
choice kind of
choosing.
too,
It's
right?
my choice. Yeah, I'm choosing to do those things. Like, that is so much more enjoyable for me. And that was my reason for wanting to be a full-time entrepreneur. First of all, I'm terrible with structure and like having a boss. But secondly, like, I wanted to have that freedom to do what I choose to do.
Love it. So let's get back to your portfolio a little bit. You mentioned you the point where you got to the 7 units and that you're using your own money, recycling it in the burst strategy. So a lot of people get to that point, that 7 to 10 units, and they're stuck because they run out of money, right? And it's happened to us too. The scaling from 7 to 36, was that when you started to go out and borrow other people's money, partner, now that you knew what you were doing?
Yep. Yes, it absolutely was. And some people that I've talked to think it's a failure to run out of your own money, but it's just that's just the facts. Like, you're eventually going to run out of your own money. So it's not a failure. It's just a pivoting point. So that's when I brought on partners. My very first partners were my parents. They're not overly wealthy. So that's another thing. They worked their W-2 jobs for 40 years. They retired with a 401k. I mean, they're smart people, so they had a decent nest egg, but they're not uber rich. Like, so very relatable. But they saw how successful I was starting to become with rentals, and they thought, hey, we're getting ready to retire. We want to make some extra money to cover our insurance premiums until we reach 65, because my mom's 62. So they've got 3 years. They're like, why don't we buy a couple rental properties with Amelia, and that'll cover our insurance expenses? And so I bought units 8 through 15 with them. they had access to a line of credit at a bank, and my mom like collateralized her 401k essentially to be able to borrow that line of credit. If we default on the loan, they'll take her 401k. So we used that money to buy a couple properties, and then we did another BRRRR on another triplex. And so we've been able to reutilize that money a couple times. So that's units through 15. And then from there, I partnered with a couple that I met on Instagram to purchase an 11-unit apartment building. So that's been my biggest purchase so far. And that got me to 26 units. And that was at the point when I quit my job. So the numbers on that were, we purchased it for $500,000, and they came with 100% of the down payment, which was around $100,000. And they're from Idaho/California. So they can't buy anything in their area for that. And they're like, hey, you're boots on the ground. We've been following you for a while. We feel like we know you. So they felt very comfortable giving me that money to invest.
Great. So that's an awesome segue to talk about this deal. So $500,000, they brought the down payment. Did you need on a property at 25% on a property like that? So they were able to bring over 150 or so?
They only 20%.
20%. Cool.
Yep.
So how did that deal? And this is a selfish question, and also some for our audience, because the best part about real estate is it's so easily creatively structured. Like you can do whatever you want with what you're agreeing with, and then the other people that are in the deal are agreeing with. So did you structure that like if you found the deal and they brought the down payment, did you 50-50 split it? Is that the equity that you came up with in terms of like the value that each of you brought to it?
Yeah. So it's actually 60-40. It's 60% them, 40% me. However, I wanted it to be 50-50, but when they suggested 60-40, I was like, absolutely, yes, let's do it. Because I was like, oh my God, 40% of this is better than 0% of nothing. Like, I was like, this is amazing. Like, absolutely. So, however, one thing I would do differently going forward, and I think this is like a pro tip here, is I'm getting paid 40% every month to basically manage, but I would write in on top of that, like some sort of a management fee. Even if it's only 5%, I would write that I also get paid as the property manager, because I'm saving our business money by self-managing. I could hire it out and we'd pay somebody else 10%, and then we'd still split profit 60-40 at this point. So,
right, but that would be 60-40 of 90% of the deal, right? As opposed to 100% of it, right?
Right.
Okay.
But we are going to BRRRR that, and we're going to refinance. And when we refinance, they'll be able to pull all their capital back out, at which point we'll restructure our agreement to be 50-50.
Got it. Okay, cool. So a property like that you own 40% of, you own 40% of the, I guess that it works as you own 40% of the equity, the debt, and then the cash flow, right? Like all of this is 40%. So what on an 11 unit property, you said 11 units, correct?
Yep.
What does that cash flow in totality? I'm genuinely curious. And then what do you think it will after the refi and the BRRRR, putting all the work into it?
Yeah. So we purchased it for $500. When we bought it, it was all long-term tenants. And I think I looked the other day, it was bringing in around $5,000 a month, maybe a little more, because they had high vacancies. Like they had a property manager managing it, and it was undermanaged, et cetera, et cetera. Now we're bringing in around $12,000 a month, and it's cash flowing probably 3 to 4, depending on if there's a turnover or whatever. After the refinance, we're not looking to like pull out every single penny. We're just looking to pull out enough to pay them off what they put into it. We'll probably cash flow around 2 to 3.
Okay, so
still good, but no money in the deal.
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point, is like your return on investment is infinity. So that's the best part of the whole thing. You have, call it, even if it's 3,000 on the low end, you're making $1,200 a month or so on that. To manage it, but you already have your management systems down. For the people that are in the deal with you that brought the capital, it's a complete win-win if they're able to pull their money out in X amount of time. They own more of the deal than you do because they brought the money. I love the structure because You can make it 50-50, you can make it 70-30, and everybody in the deal or in any deal wants something different. They're probably in a different stage in their lives than you are, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, they're absolutely. They're a little bit older than me. They have two little kids. They've got a construction business. They're super busy. They literally just wanted me to be able to write them a check every single month and pay them their portion, which worked out great. I was ready to do the hustling and be the boots on the ground, because to me, like, to own an 11 unit apartment, that's totally worth it.
What's the way that you found the deal? Like, how did you come across the deal and bring it to them? And I know you said you met on Instagram, but some people wouldn't know what to do with an 11 unit if they found it. And even if they did, you were able to network through Instagram. So like, talk to me about the process of knowing that it was a good deal for you.
Well, first of all, I was scared shitless. I hope I can cuss on this podcast
You can
because
cuss, and I'm like that every day. So I think it's a good thing. You just kind of just scared and do it anyway. That's what we always say.
So because it was huge, like, to me, I had been investing for not quite a year at that point, like 10 months. And so it was scary to me to bring that deal to an investor. But basically I found it was on the MLS. It had been on the MLS for probably 30 to 45 days. And I love the location. It looks down on the Des Moines skyline, which is super cool. And the Des Moines downtown is expanding south towards where that apartment unit is. So I loved the location. I had in the back of my mind that we would be able to convert a couple of the units to midterm rentals, thus increasing the cash flow. And so, yeah, that's how I found it. I think other investors maybe weren't really looking at it. One, because I think it was a little bit too big for like a brand new investor. And two, it was too small for like the big guys. They don't care about an 11 unit. So it was kind of just the middle people that were like really going to be
just a small amount of people.
It really is.
Yeah.
Like, if you think about it, it really is. So once I found it, I toured it and I was like, oh my God, I have to get this. I have literally no money though. So I'm going to post about it on Instagram and see if anyone is interested in partnering with me. Now I know there's like rules about fundraising and things like that. So I have no idea if what I did was legal or not, but I'm the type of person that's like, ask for forgiveness later or whatever that saying is. And I'm like, really? They're not concerned about somebody looking for $100,000 anyways. So I posted it on Instagram. I had a couple people message me. I sent an email to all the people with the details, how much their cash on cash return would be, what I was looking for specifically, and then ended up with the partners that I have. It's been like the best partnership ever. We're looking to do more deals together actually, but yeah, that's how I found it. Scared shitless, did it anyways, worked out really well, converted 6 of the units myself with a handyman into medium-term, midterm rentals. So that's where we're at.
So did you know immediately based on how did you qualify, I guess would be my question, knowing the location and the price? Did you just, some people have like, the quadratic formula and stuff that they go through, and I'm being facetious, but like this entire chart of what makes a good deal. Did you just say, I know the area is good, I know the price is good, I'll figure out the cash flow later? Or was there a specific formula that drove you to say this deal is going to be like awesome?
Pretty much what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I'm a doer. Like I just like failure isn't an option. Everything's figure outable. I think there's a book on that. But yeah, I knew like I'm good at running the numbers. So I knew that it cash flowed even at like keeping it all long term. It cash flowed it a little bit, like enough to make it a decent deal. But I knew it's 2 minutes from downtown where there's 5 major hospitals. I knew that we would be able to convert at least 1 or 2 of the units to midterm. Thus, we increased our cash flow $1,200 with just 2 midterm units. So, yeah.
Well, the cool thing about investing in an area like you are is that, first of all, $500,000 for 11 unit is like crazy for what I'm hearing. But also the rent doesn't go down that significantly. Like a property here that's in an up and coming area in Philadelphia would probably be like 1.3 or 1.4 million. But the thing is that for a 1 bedroom, if they're 1 bedrooms, like you're not going to get lower than than $500 or $600 a month, like almost anywhere. And the point being is that even if they're $500 or $600 a month, you're talking about over the 1% rule. So that kind of rule of thumb may apply. I don't know if they're one bedrooms or if you said that, but like that to me is an indicator. Okay, I can make this deal work. And then especially by being able to increase the revenue by, you said around that 50% number, then if it's a 2% deal, 2%, and